Hi there. Welcome to the Right Here, Right Now live show. This show has one simple question. What's on your heart and mind right here, right now in this moment? We explore the depths and breadths of our humanity through that one simple question over the course of 30 to 45 minutes. I hope that you'll join us. I hope you'll enjoy the exploration. And this tune was created for me personally by the incredible Peter Griffiths, one half of the amazing Mind Takeaway. Do let us know what you think. Let us know what you take away. And of course, we always welcome challenges too. Hope to see you on the exploration. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm like super excited. Look at that smiling face on the other side of Europe. Mr. Tom van der Lubbe. How are you, sir? Great to see you today.
Hi Gary, I'm actually on a mental level. I'm doing very fine, so perhaps that's why I'm smiling. But I have a little bit of a cough because we have two small children, and yeah, that's a typical time of the year where you in a family you have a cough continuously. But it's fine.
Well, thanks for joining us again. For those that may not have met Tom before, Tom joined us back on episode 102 of the Value Through Vulnerability podcast a couple of years ago, and that was pre-pandemic, I think, Tom. So a lot's changed, but maybe not a lot has changed. So please introduce yourself. Take a couple of moments to let those that are watching us live or may watch this back know a bit about Tom van der Lubbe before we go exploring today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I sorry, I actually didn't know that it was that long ago. But time flies when you're having fun. I think it's called. I'm 53. I'm Dutch. I'm active as an entrepreneur in the Netherlands, but I live in Zurich, which is just by coincidence. I lived here before the company started, and my former colleagues asked me to join. We do mortgage advice. But most of the time, I don't speak about mortgage advice. I'm also not a specialist on that topic. But we mainly, let's say, discuss topics like putting people first in the workplace, or talking about being human. So this kind of topics. So if people have seen me before or Google stuff, then mostly it's about other topics and not about mortgage advice.
So interesting. I just love that frame, Tom, as well. Like we're sort of coming out of this 100 years of here's my business card, my identity is within this 6 inch by 3 inch piece of card, and instead you're just like, no, here's the human being. It's about people first, and by the way, we also offer mortgages. It's completely flipped, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, although one has to say that, for instance, I stopped doing talks with applicants because people should feel attached to, let's say, the business. So in the past, I also interviewed candidates, and then we found out that I was doing not a good job. Why? Because people like self-organization and transparent salaries and the purpose, etc., etc. And then half a year later, they thought, I didn't like to give mortgage advice or whatsoever. And so there should be, let's say, for the company, there should be a connection to the topic as well.
Mm-hmm. No, fair point. So tell us, like I say, we love going on very open explorations on this platform, Tom. So what in particular is on your heart and mind right here, right now, in this moment on the 22nd of November?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually didn't put it in my calendar to think about this answer because I already had forgotten, to be totally honest about it. So what is on my mind is a post I saw this morning um, about degrowth. So I mean, we just had this Glasgow climate topic or conference, and I don't want to dive into this conference, but I think we're moving much more into a direction of what I would call less is more, of degrowth. So we have to shrink, and we're still not capable to leave this path of growth with this just uh, um, yeah, it just doesn't work anymore. So this we still don't realize that it's about less and not about more, which I find totally interesting because in this world of art and architecture, and in the past I wrote an article about what we can learn from Mies van der Rohe, the famous architect who built this pavilion in Barcelona. It's about less.
Hmm.
And I saw a post this morning and I thought, yes, it is about less, but we're not able, especially in the business context, we're not able to accept this.
Tom, if you'd, I was not expecting that to be the thing that's on your heart and mind, but I'm so pleased that it is because I'm finding since we last spoke, these topics are actually more and more on my heart and mind, which one of which is sustainability, regeneration. How do we live in line with nature's planetary boundaries? And how, so these sorts of things are popping up more and more for me. But that degrowth topic, I work in the chemicals industry, and it's all about double-digit growth year on year, year on year, year on year, and there's almost myopic. So I'm really interesting. What about the degrowth topic is particularly interesting for you? Because you've got a business, which I guess is also growing in
Mm,
some
yeah, that's
states.
right.
So I'm wondering what's the interplay for you between growing a business and degrowth?
Yeah, it's very interesting because the topic comes, this question comes more often. I think that especially those companies who are, let's say, trying to change something, they have to do exactly the opposite. So they have to grow just to get a bigger part of this market to be able to change something. So you have a very
Mm.
strange situation that on the one hand, let's say, if I just talk about my own opinion, we have to shrink on a macro level, we have to grow on a company level. So we have to get a bigger market share of, let's say, mortgage advice in the Netherlands, because if we want to change something, we have to be the market leader. So we can't just leave it to the bad guys. So if you are a good guy, you have to win the game, so to say. But
Hmm.
on the personal level, I there is it's about less is more again. So it's about reflection, about that more wealth or more houses or more cars or more clothes don't make you happier. No, the opposite is the case. And then you let's say you look into your cupboard and you see the amount of shirts you have or a pair of shoes, etc., etc., and then you realize that you perhaps only need two jeans or two pair of shoes, and it even is a burden to have such a huge cupboard full of clothes, which perhaps, let's say, half of the stuff or three quarters of the stuff you don't wear. So, and you see this also if you talk about consumption, that, for instance, I always ask, do I really need this? So I don't like shopping. So for me, perhaps it's a little bit easier than a lot of other people, but I don't like shopping. But if I have this idea, I want something, I try to reflect and say, do I really need it? And not always in this big environmental framing. Let's say, asking yourself how many liters of clean water your new jeans would cost somewhere in the environment, but more, where where is this reason to have another one? Or is
Hmm.
this a kind of mental game where I should say to myself, I could buy it, I also could buy two extra, but I reflect on this and I say, no, I take the active decision not to buy. It's a kind of mental game. So I think it's interesting because on the one hand you have this individual discussion of less is more, then in the middle the company which wants to change something and wants to grow, and then on the macro level we also have to shrink. So kind of strange sandwich situation.
Do you know something? But I love this. I really appreciate how you brought that. Yeah, you almost have to get to a critical mass, almost to be to be seen to be serious stroke have the power within that particular market dynamic to drive the change. Because if you're the small minnow in the nicest possible way, it's easy just to stamp out that small voice. But if you're leading it, then you've got more influence for change. I think that's a really beautiful framing, actually.
Yeah, and there are also two aspects. So in our case, it is we wanted to know, where does the money come from your mortgage and where does it go to? And
Mm-hmm.
we try to find out, and we try to ask those banks, can you please tell me where the money comes from, and where it's brought to after the mortgage has been taken to the customer, and you just don't get the information. So perhaps sometimes they say no, it's not your topic, or they say we also don't know it. So so um, and then we said, okay, yeah, let's try to get a kind of label or a certificate, etc. But we only have 1% of the market. So
Mm-hmm.
so so we don't have, let's say, the people who can work on this on a daily basis, 24 hours. Um, but it's also, we're just not important enough. So it's like this small mouse telling the elephant, could you please move a little bit to the left side? And then the elephant says, who are you? And if you're unlucky, and then you're crushed by the elephant's foot. So that's why at a certain point we just said, okay, we just give up on this. We make still our point when there is a possibility, but let's focus on growing, growing, growing.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger we get, the more influence we will have.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and I think it's interesting because one of my friends, Lucy, who's actually a sustainability consultant, Tom, she's been doing a lot of work around carbon literacy, and part of that has been the financial market. So I had a look at my own pension funds, in fact, last
Yeah,
week,
it's the same.
and I was having a look and going, okay, yeah, okay, and the ethical funds, of which I have 88 with my employer. There's 88 funds I can choose from. Two of them are classed as ethical, and within those ethical funds, you've got mining companies, oil companies.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's very interesting that even if you're being a conscious consumer, it's still not easy to place your money where your heart maybe wants to place the money.
It's a little bit to get it very practical. It's a little bit like if you go into a grocery shop. So that we're very used to, where do the bananas come from, and is it Chiquita or the Max Havelaar certificate, or is the milk from, I don't know, the farmer around the corner, or whatsoever, depending on what you consume. And then in our case, you talk about the financial industry, and if it is impact investing in the pension schemes or the mortgages, these are the huge parts or the huge brackets. And everybody always says, yeah, I don't know where the money comes from. And if you ask clients, then they say, oh, I never realized this. I only go for, I need a mortgage fast. What's the interest rate, and shall I, what kind of duration, what kind of decision shall I take if it's talk more or less about financial planning. But nobody says, where does the money come from, or where does it go to?
Mm.
So still a long way to go.
But I love that you've got that vision. So tell us a little bit about, for those again that may not know you, Tom, around the self-management piece. There's a lot of great literature. You've written some brilliant blogs and articles around your approach as Visi to the mortgage market. Where did that inspiration for the self-managed approach come from? Was that something sort of philosophical within you and your co-founders, or was there some other story behind that?
Uh, There's again, the answer is that there are more levels. So on the one hand, it's very practical. What you often see is that founders or people who start companies, they don't want to be micromanaged. So they don't flourish that well in big corporate environments. So that's one topic. So we said, okay, it's funny that if people start companies, that if those companies grow, those entrepreneurs who started the company because they didn't want to be managed, they start to become managers themselves. So we have to think about this. So that was one reason, and the other thing is that um, if you want to scale company, self-organization, so decentralized decision making just works much better. And the third thing is we just talked about is, which actually I didn't realize that well when we started self-organization, is that if you work with self-organization and the company grows, you have a chance of doing the stuff you really would like to do. So in the beginning, when you're 4 people or 10 people, you have a lot of stuff you do, but it's not your favorite topic. But the longer and the bigger the company gets, the more we always can ask our people, you have a certain set of roles. What do you really like? So what are
Hmm.
your A roles and what are your B roles? And let's hire a person for the B roles. So the bigger the company gets in this kind of structure, the more people can really focus on the stuff they really love. So I'm a very good example. We're 60 people now. In the past, I also had the CFO role, which I did, but it's not my favorite topic. I like much more to write articles, to do podcasts, to share our learnings, etc., which also plays a role in scaling a company. If you talk about recruiting, etc.
Hmm.
So I think life becomes more beautiful, yeah, down the road, so to say.
That's really beautiful. I just want to share, excuse me. It's a lovely comment here. I've just checked on LinkedIn. Thank you, Adrienne, for this comment. So, yeah, fascinating topic. We should care where the money comes from. Who am I paying back as a mortgage lender? Where do they get their money from as it relates to ESG? Yeah, and I think there is definitely a generational shift, isn't there? That technology availability. Okay, there's almost too much information sometimes, but we are able now more and more to weave together. Okay, so that company's investing here. Oh, that one's investing in mining, or that one's investing in consumer goods. There's a lot more data starting to be available to everybody, Tom.
Yeah, I think let's say what is my frustration. So I'm 53, and what's my frustration is that let's say if you just take the new generation, or not only Greta Thunberg, but just in general, uh, um, they understand much better that in a world which is not endless, we really have to change something. But my generation is just still destroying our planet. And what I find so confronting and also frustrating, that I always ask myself, my generation who would have the chance to change something, why don't they change it? They also have children and grandchildren, I think. So how do those people manage this? So if you are a CEO of, it doesn't have to be all company. It's more a general topic.
Hmm.
But I would say, let's say those people, they attend those conferences and tell a lot of stuff in interviews why it's not able to change much faster, and then they come, they go back home, or they're sitting with their grandchildren on the Sunday, eating cake, etc. And then I think, oh, what kind of discussions do you have with your grandchildren or with your children? And that's what I find very frustrating,
Hmm.
and also in a way very depressing. So I really understand that people feel very depressed, and especially the younger generation feels very depressed about this incredible, inactive, egoistic way of behaving.
God, you've opened up so many like rabbit holes, Tom, that I want to go down with you in our next 12 minutes. Because as you say, this isn't just an industry specific challenge, but I will say, as someone that works within the chemicals industry, supplying pharmaceutical food, our upstream raw material is always oil. It's fossil fuel. So while yes, it's all industries, there's certain industries, Tom, that have more of an impact on a day-to-day basis, and one of those is my industry. So I'm having the conversations internally around degrowth. To come back to that point that's on your heart and
Yeah,
mind today, it is not a conversation that people want to be having, because there is so much identity wrapped up in growing, growing, growing. And then, of course, back to your question, like what conversation happening around the dinner table? I think there's just absolute. I thought people were unconscious, Tom, but I don't think they are. A lot of people do realize this stuff's all connected. It's more a fear of letting go or reducing or not having as much. I think there's so much wrapped up in this consumption cycle. And I'm curious what you think what could be some of the triggers that maybe break that.
yeah, it's difficult to say. Sometimes I think that people on an individual level would, let's say, if it's confidential, always agree on all those topics, because it's so obvious. So I don't, also in the financial sector, I don't think that people from, let's say, the starting point is not that people want to ruin the world.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so.
Totally agree.
But but we all together in a kind of mechanism, which is it's a kind of a machine we're not able to stop. On the other hand, we are voters. So I think the only way of changing this is is by voting or by political protests. So if I just see what happened in the Netherlands with Shell, for instance, it was the public opinion which forced the government to tell them not, let's say, the big pension fund of the Dutch state, ABP, they didn't invest anymore in Shell and the fossil fuels. So I think I'm not quite sure if let's say our public protest as a citizen is probably the only solution we have, because as long as you are in this kind of mechanism and you're competing with others, you can only say, please state, please governments, please create a kind of new structure
Hmm.
like we did in the past with let's say voting rights for everybody, etc. That's the only way to solve it. But I don't believe in that the industry will solve the problem for us.
Yeah, no, I am with you, and I think bringing this full circle, the fact that you, Visi, as a company, are self-managed, just to weave this into Greta Thunberg, activism, etc. For I think it's fascinating that Extinction Rebellion, whatever
Yeah,
anybody's view is, I actually had a look at their manifesto. It's one single page, all about how they self-organize. One, not a big handbook of 100 pages. You
yeah,
must wear this, you must do this, these are your times off, this is when you take your holiday, here's when you go to the toilet. One single page is what the whole of Extinction Rebellion globally is based on, Tom. How
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, I think, but it's also in our company. We only have one rule, the golden rule, and that's it. We even don't have a handbook. So, but I think in general for whole society, everybody will subscribe to it. The question is just to get it full circle. How do we save this disaster, or how do we avoid this disaster? And I actually don't believe, although I'm an entrepreneur, that we are able to solve this. We have to solve this as citizens and speak up and go demonstrating like Greta Thunberg does.
Yeah, and that's a big invitation, right? I do my own little bit of internal activism within my industry. I'm trying to do more and more of that. But I feel it in my body every day. Like I know I could say and do more. But then there's that little bit of a pull of you've got a family, you've got this way of life. How much of that do you let go of? So it's like this continuous tension, and I feel it in my body every day, Tom.
Yeah, and it's also a question. Let's say what possibility do you have? Let's say if I speak up in the financial industry, I know that most people can't because they're on the payroll somewhere. So I try to focus on, let's say, raising my voice or sharing our opinions in a sector where it is very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah,
And the reaction of those people on the individual level is, please continue, I totally agree. But let's say in my corporate environment, it's very difficult for me because I also have to pay the rent and to send my children to school. So which is understandable.
yeah. So
So let's focus on where we think our impact has most, let's say, most value, or has the highest influence.
I love this so much. One of the things, so I've actually got a spiritual guide based in the Philippines who I've been getting supported by over the last year, Tom. And what she's doing is helping me sense into all of these different systemic, all these different weaves, all these multiple systems. I think this is also the old world, right? Is it's either or it's guarantees and assurance. And what we're really realizing is that it's everything at the same time. So yes, we need to send our kids to school, but we can still speak up within our particular
Yeah.
context. So it's sort of like moving away from this or mindset to there is always a possibility, but it's being very intentional about where you take that action
Yeah, it's yin and yang, huh?
continuously.
Yeah.
So tell me what you're excited about. Like I'm really intrigued. Like this is it's a really a lovely layer on top of the last chat we had nearly 2 years ago, where we were very much focused on your self-management, and there's this beautiful self-management plus sort of systemic sort of weave that we're putting in today. I'm wondering, what are you most excited about, whether it be busy, whether it be societally, what's getting you excited these days, Tom?
Yeah, it's also different stuff. Let's say on the one hand, I'm a very old father, so my children are 6 and 5 years old, and let's say the joy and the simplicity of children is just yeah, lovable or beautiful, especially because we're so working with our minds all the time. That's one thing. On the other thing is that the more you zoom out, the more I always end up with philosophy.
Mm.
So, which I find interesting is that all those questions we discuss are eternal questions and they have been around all the time. It doesn't mean if it's Socrates or and you find it everywhere in the world. So you can read Chinese philosophy or it doesn't matter where it is. So which I on the other hand also find very disturbing. So these questions have been the same since ever,
Yeah.
but the question is, do we really progress, or are we just, let's say, moving faster towards our own destiny of destroying this globe? So which yeah, which and then the circle is around. So it's a mixture of being positive. It's, let's say, it's the mind, the positive mind of the hope, and it's the negative depressive side of let's say the numbers, and to balance this in, let's say, in me as a person. That's my, I don't know how I call this, sometimes a little bit easier, sometimes a little bit more difficult. But
Hmm.
people think that I'm very positive, but that's not the case. It's a kind of mixture, and I think it's my duty to stay positive. But there are also a lot of moments, especially in the evening, when I've read too much stuff. Then I also feel depressed. So to balance this is, I think, something a lot of people have to deal with.
I love this, and the word I would use from my point of view, it is this just the paradox of being human,
Yeah,
the paradox of being a conscious or an increasingly conscious human. You know, one of my biggest challenges, Tom, at the moment, is I literally it's an addiction, right? I drink soft drinks. Like I know they're not good for me. I know they come in a plastic bottle that comes from the chemicals that I sell. Yet I keep buying this stuff, right? There's a classic example. You know, maybe
yeah,
someone gets the next upgrade of their mobile phone, but they don't really need the upgrade, but they're so used to getting the upgrade. You know, so it's just I think it's these little micro changes that we can make within ourselves that can over time actually make a difference as well. That's what I stay a bit hopeful for, as long as I do change.
I hope. I hope.
But Jesse, the thing I'm sort of as we start to wrap up, the thing I was most inspired by COP26 actually, that took for anyone that maybe hasn't followed the COP26 that happened in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, major meeting around trying to turn around our planetary and environmental challenges, was the youth. How eloquent, how clear, how visionary, how systemically sort of wise so many of the youth are, as you said. Like I didn't even think about this stuff till 3 years ago. Like, and these basically young people under the age of 25 have just, yeah, it blows my mind. It blows my mind their
The,
understanding of the world.
the sometimes I'm positive. So let's say I'm a historian. So if I just see that, for instance, the development of the United Nations was a reaction to the Second World War, as an example, or if you take the 60s, liberation, etc., etc. I mean, it's we talk a lot about emancipation nowadays. That's not that long ago. That's the 70s. But the problem with, let's say, the environment is that it's it's we can't wait for this. So it's a
Mhm.
kind of it's at a certain point it's just too late. So I mean, you can, let's say, trying to figure out that everybody is able to elect could have taken, let's say, 100 years later, but you would not ruin your world. But climate is probably the first topic where you just can't say, okay, perhaps it takes 50 years longer because it's just 5 past 12 or 10 past 12. And that's, let's say, from a historical point of view, I think it's a unique situation, but unique in a very negative way. And that's something which is very, very disturbing.
Mhm. Wow. We knew this had happened, Tom. That's half an hour. gone, flow state. This is what happens on this show. We have amazing guests like Tom. We go all over the place, and there's just amazing exploration. So I want to give you the last word and let you get on with the rest of your Monday, rest of this week. Tom, what's your invitation for anyone that's watching us live or maybe watches us back? Anything you might suggest or invite them to read or consider as they go into their day?
As I said, the people who are much older or as old as I, perhaps reflect on your grandchildren, and the younger people don't accept the situation you're in now, and just follow what is obvious, and don't listen too much to what those older generations have to tell you. Um, uh, Follow your own path, so to say, and speak up.
Powerful stuff. Love it. So good to see you again, Tom. Thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward already to watching this back and collecting the insights as an observer. So thanks for all you're doing, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Garry.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Adrienne, thanks for the comment, and we'll see you all around. Cheers, Tom, and cheers everyone.